from setting up fights for the mob to beating up his wives. Jake LaMotta was more than just a fighter. Criminals who were violent and unstable. His heart to the mob and his real story isn't the one Hollywood told you about. The truth is a lot more disturbing and unnerving as hell. He could keep secrets about scams and crimes. Don't run away from things you don't know about. Jake LaMotta's is a lot worse than you think. Due to learn how LaMotta became one boxer who was feared the most, that people hate the most, will have to go right. Nobody ever goes back to where it all began. Please call me for some reason or so strongly that I convinced myself of another. Jake LaMotta that no one could hurt me. Came into the world with both. In a real and symbolic way born in New. He was born in New York City to Italian parents. Brought up in a home where hands did. He talked a lot about when his mother was born in the US, but his dad had come over from Sicily to find the so-called American dream. He had a hard life. Afterwards, he talked about how his father would beat him often, and he said that his father was the only man he really feared. Think about that. The man who would later step into the fight was Sugar Ray Robinson. 6 times was once just a scared child. He was getting ready for another beating, but fear changes forms in strange ways. Lamb's case, it didn't make him shy. Brought him anger and fury even. As a child, he had a bad temper that he couldn't handle, as he said when I was 8 years old, I was already. When I was mad at someone, I would hit them. Getting to talk to each other because I thought they might be talking about me. I used to get so mad at. There was nothing I didn't care about. Took place whether I killed them or they killed me. There might have been an blast across the street, but I wouldn't have heard it that way. Anger and fear turned into a part of his attitude. This kind of rage doesn't leave, it just finds a new home. Goals, and LaMotta would soon find them. Lots as a child, his family lived in. He was poor, but his father used to. Jake as a child was naturally angry and angered by setting up fights for money with other boys in the area. The adults in the area would gather around and throw coins at the boys as they beat them up to have fun with each other, and then Jake's dad would take the money and use it to help pay the rent for a family. No way it could have been pretty fun to grow up that way, for sure. Must have made him tougher, but now that's child abuse, there's no doubt about it. Another word for it, but for LaMotta it was. It's just life, but in a weird way. Got him ready for what was next. At some point, his family left New York and spent some time in Philadelphia. But when they came back, they moved to the Bronx, a place where teens and young adults who had anger problems had to. What careers you can take, fighting or crime. LaMotta picked both, and it wasn't long before he began to make a name for himself. A reputation for being violent quickly spread, and it did not matter if you were a street thug, a bookie, or just a bad luck charm bystander. He'd hit you if you got in his way. Tear you apart like a wrecking ball if one story tells it all. The anger and carelessness that lived inside Jake LaMotta, this is it, and trust me on this one. At 17, LaMotta wasn't just rough, some crazy kid getting into scraps. He was already a dangerous person. He was going to rob a neighborhood business. A bookie he knew always had cash on him, and he wasn't going to just. He was ready to scare him away. Damage with a lead rod. He stalked his target with a pipe in his hand and waited for the right time to strike. He crept up behind the ass and hit him in the back of the head, but the guy didn't do this. LaMotta took that famous picture when he got down. His anger boiled over into pure, unhinged rage. He kept swinging again and again. And again until the bookie finally gave up. Down to the ground. While he was out, he grabbed the money and they ran off, leaving the man on the street. No shame, no doubt, but if you thought that was, you won't believe what he said after hearing it. What he did to his own wife the next day. The news stories made him sick to his stomach. The man had died. LaMotta walked around for 10 years straight. Because they thought he was a killer, and he thought it was some kind of guilt. Of debts owed to the universe, like karma would catch up with him in the end. After years, the twist is that LaMotta is, while he was getting ready for a fight, the bookie walks in, and everyone knows him. Living, the guy actually praised Madam, he didn't know that the man. There was the same person in front of him. The person who tried to cave his head in. 10 years ago, LaMotta said he felt like a ghost walked into the room out of the blue. He stood there in the room and didn't say a word. There, shocked, he looked at the scars on his body. Attack had left that poor bookie behind. Went to his grave without ever find out the secret no one told you. What took place that night until it was something LaMotta admitted to in his years later in a book. This wasn't, even though it was his only run-in with the law. At the same time he was caught. Rob a gold store, which finally got caught. He was sent to a reformed school, and that most likely was the best thing that what could have happened to him. He learned to box there for the first time. You can guess that he was pretty good at fighting, and when he got out, he kept boxing to make money. To make a little extra money, he went pro. At age 19 and didn't seem to lose any of his fights as an amateur. It could have been. It was inevitable that an angry guy like that would be interested in the world of war, but let's be honest, this wasn't some. Boxing didn't save Jake in the end. LaMotta had only made him more social. The right way to do what he had always done, bad things to people, and trust me, outside the ring he never took off before you didn't get to the top without the with the mafia's blessing. LaMotta refused to play until he gave up one night. As a pro, he put together a string fast of 14 wins, with only one tie. A mark on his record, and L gets an exciting knockout over the very strong Luke, but in his 16th fight he first time in a long time to lose. A very controversial game with Mr. For Reeves. The last bell rang after 10 rounds. Rang, and everyone in the building knew LaMotta had done everything he needed to do to win, but the Reeves was given the win by the judges. Narrow vote, and the crowd, loud cheers, blew up and fights broke out around the ring, and it took 20 minutes before things were back in order. That was not a loss, it was theft. That was fighting back then. If the gang did not want you to lose, you lost. The two went up against each other again in a repeat, which LaMotta lost by a lot less ground. It was a controversial unanimous choice, but in the third fight, he finally got his own back. After a few years, when he blew out his opponent in the 6th round. However, he was building one at the same time. One of the toughest rivals in boxing history. Sugar Ray Robinson lost the first fight, but in the second one, LaMotta got back at Robinson by handing him its first loss in its history. This was to be the only time in 6 fights that Lassiter won, but those fights turned into battles that made history for both. LaMotta later joked that he was a man's job. Had fought Sugar a lot, that he almost And Sugar was even the best man. When Lamb gets married, he is, without a doubt, one of the best fighters ever put on gloves. You could even call him the best. I say pound for pound fighter of all time. You can't beat me as a heavyweight. A lot of times, but I still say Sugar Robinson was the best of all of them. Times that in getting even one win over a great Robinson, even though they lost. Lama was known as a member of the elite fighters of his time, so eventually he should be given a chance at the title. Wrong, because even though almost everyone he was put in front of, he needs to remember that fighting at the time was mostly ruled by the mob, and because LaMotta wouldn't play, they wouldn't let them take the ball with them ever. He would fight for the world title, and he said no for years because he was too proud, unwilling to give in too much of a street fighter to bow down to no one, not even the most dangerous villains in the fight game. But defiance cost a lot, and that's when he realized it. He fought hard, but men were the only ones he couldn't beat. The ones who ran the sport from the shades. The walls were closing in on us. There is no future, and no way to move forward. Lama had to decide whether to kneel or be. He forgot, and in the end he gave up. It was easy, just start a fight and get a title shot. Yes, he may be selling his soul to the mafia, but if he could, he needs to put his pride aside just this once. He would at least finally get what was due to him. After 6 years as a pro, in his 79th fight, LaMotta agreed to fight with. That was easy, Jake. All he had to do was put on a show, take some pictures, and Fox wins. But then the fight did start, and it was totally awful. See, Fox wasn't just he was a weaker boxer, and he was just plain bad. In his book, Lama wrote that Fox can't even. You look good in the first round, belts around his head, and I see He looked at Jesus Christ with he's going to fall after a few jabs. Down by the fourth, if there was anyone in the yard who didn't know what was. He had to be very drunk for that to happen. Think about that for a moment. Fixing the fight was so. It was painfully clear that the crowd began shouting. People were laughing out loud. And the New York State Sports Commission took the bags away, and LaMotta was banned from fighting, but it wasn't. It was part of the plan, but a deal is a deal, and even though it was one of the easiest fixes, being open and awkward in boxing. In the past, Lama had worked for the mafia. Rules gave them money, $20,000, and he was finally given a chance at the title. Was it worth it? The question of what is certain is that he had to live for the rest of his life with the fact that his ticket to winning the championship cost him. Proud of his honesty and one of the worst nights of his career. Fight for the title was against French. The fighter Marcel Stan, who he beat. Become the middleweight winner of the world, and the bad feeling that selling out to the mafia had been changed to the sweet taste of victory. But something didn't feel right, and Sardan wasn't at his best that night. Early in the fight he messed up his shoulder, which made it less of a fight and more of a beating for one side. A repeat was set up right away, but they never saw each other again because fate had other plans for them. Sen got on a plane to go to the US too. Second time you try to fight Lama, he wins. Never got there. His plane crashed, killing everyone on board. Everyone was on board, and then Lam, the Mat's biggest opponent, was gone. He instead defended his title against Laceron and Tiberio Mitri. Doyle almost pulled off the Mata was upset that he was behind in the score. when he was able to make a amazing knockout in just 13 seconds. Time left on the clock, adding to his image as someone who would never give up. But if you thought that was exciting, what's next? No one would ever forget the fight. His name, because he was taking over. The ring next to it was his old rival Sugar Ray Robinson for the sixth and last time, and we all know how that one goes. Didn't we go on February 14th, 1951? Night Lama struck into a killing spree. The fight was set for 15, and as the fight moved on to the later rounds, Robinson started to beat up on him badly. LaMotta, despite getting harsh punishments. Robinson in the 12th, LaMotta yelled, "You can't put me on the deck." The line judge stopped the fight in the next round. The fight turned into. It was also known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. A killing from only one side that showed the world that yes, LaMotta was hard, but Robinson was just on a different level. Thank you for fighting after this loss. Lama chose to move up to light tough guy, but the magic was gone in he was knocked out in the fight against Danny Nero. Down for the first and only time in his life. His whole career for years he had bragged that no son of ___ ever hit me off my feet, but that was gone now too. It was clear that his time at the top was over. After the fights were over, he went on to. After losing, he fought 3 more times. In his last fight, Nero lost against Billy Kilgore and then left of the ring one last time with a record of 839-4, but while he was boxing, that's where the fighting outside the ring didn't, because while people in the ring were afraid of him, the people he was said to love the most feared him even. Jake LaMotta wasn't just an angry person. Man in the ring, he was a rough guy. He was married 7 times during that time, and if all of his women had one thing in common, they all felt the same way, scared of him to take this disgusting event. One time, he became sure without any real proof that he was seeing his best friend Pete, so he drove home and beat the crap out of her, and then went to Pete's and beat the crap out of him at work, too. The worst part is that there is no real proof that either Vicky or Pete did something wrong. It's more possible that Lotta is violent. Decisions were only based on his unable to control their jealousy and fear. Yes, we've already said that this was a part of him from the time he was only a kid, and the death of the years didn't seem to change anything. Better, if anything, he got worse as he aged. What a jerk, no one needs him. Friends like this, and after that day, the so-called best friend Pete didn't say anything. Not to talk to him again for 10 years. Not exactly a surprise either. What's more, it's strange that Pete ever talked to not seeing him again at all, but what's even worse, it's strange that LaMotta never seemed to not feel bad about how he treated her. People he never said he was he was wrong and blamed everyone but himself, and when it came to beating his women, he even tried to explain it. That if you had a girl and she was pretty, and other people were to ask her out and flirt with her, wouldn't you get mad? I saw these jerks and schmucks putting out lines, and it made me feel bad, but that's not anger. I was in charge, but his worst argument if you hit them hard enough, they'd be dead. Know how you act when you're abroad. Just a bit, and everything is blown out of line. No, Jake. Most people don't hit around abroad it's just you. He even brags about being abused when I was with him. I hit my wife, but it wasn't a punch. totally gross, but if you happen to. If you think that is bad, wait until you hear this. This one time when he was really drunk, he hit his wife in the face with a rock. Before he passed out from the. Now most people, even the worst ones, drink. People who would freak out and call them for help because they were afraid for her life. But his first thought when he came around was that he killed her and that a murder could have a bad effect on the rest. In all of his fighting years, it didn't even enter his mind to worry about her. He should have loved the woman all he did. All he could think about was himself. Planned to throw her body in the river. Yeah, that guy was a wimp. In the end, she changed her mind, so he didn't have to do the plan, but there's no doubt he would have been able to do it, and that's not even. The worst of it gets even worse. Awful because Jake wrote it in his own book. LaMotta casually admits to raping and, like everything else he's done, he ignored it like it wasn't a problem. He claims he was only giving the woman a little push to let them know what it is. Like to put a little more load on it. When women get their firsts, it often they act like they didn't want it to happen. It's just a game to them again, no Jake. A lot of people don't know what it is. Like because most people aren't rapists. So not only a man who beats his wife, but also a rapist who never got caught. This or a lot of his other sins, but thank goodness he didn't get away with it. Everything after he stopped boxing. LaMotta ran a club in Miami and it's claimed that the club was full of sex work and that some of the girls, those who worked there, were underage. He was finally found guilty of giving a 14-year-old girl to a pimp and then given a 6-month chain gang sentence. Months, and even in his memoirs that he never said he was. Just like he was guilty of everything else. After he was freed, he had nothing else going for him. His wrestling days were over. He felt bad about his image, so he tried to get everything that was left out of his name. He tried to act, but it was hard for him to remember movies he tried. It turns out that no one found stand-up comedy. He was funny by this point. The once fierce and strong Jake LaMotta had hit rock bottom and was just about getting by. But that's when he thought of writing a book about his life. That book then turned into a great boxing movie. Martin Scorsese directed the movie Raging Bull. The movie stars Robert De Niro. Didn't praise LaMotta, it showed him off. Doesn't mind telling the truth about his life, and some people asked LaMotta why he would want to be taking part in such an unattractive project. He had something to do with making the movie, helped Daigo with his drawing of him, and even taught him how to box so he would be able to look believable in the. Why would he do that? Was he going to be in a movie that made him look like such a violent, unacceptable figure? Maybe because he knew it was true deep down. He said it himself. I was mad when I saw the movie of bad in it, and then I saw it was. Yes, that's how it was. I was a no-show. Okay, you jerk, I get it now. It's not the past and the present. Then it sounds like you felt bad, but did it really happen? Because even in his last years, when you might have thought he would show up, to have calmed down the way he spoke, the things he did showed a very self-centered, vain, and even callous lack of care for the people he. Even his so-called awareness was destroyed. How bad he was felt like just yet another act that you know as iconic. Ragged Bull scene where Derry is hitting the wall by yourself, being locked up and letting out his anger. The whole world on the jail floor. That wasn't just Hollywood. began at a young age. This anger had always been a part of him, and even though it made him do great feats in the ring, but it would also made him a bad person on the outside. Lam spent his whole life doing that. Getting into the ring to fight. His monsters were fighting everyone, but the fight he could never have. He beat himself, so he's sure he's a Fight Hall of Famer, but he's also just about the worst person who has ever lived. Taking part in the sport of boxing, and that really means something. So what? Do you think you can separate the fighter from the man you respect? What he did inside the ring? Though they were against everything he did outside of it, or does his violence due to brutality and crime, it is not possible to don't remember him as a beast. Put your thoughts in the leave your thoughts below, and while you're here, click the like button if you like this movie. Sign up, and it really helps the keep making more fighting videos channel like this. See you in the next one.